This video is Masada is Jerusalem, right? Now, it's a this is a mystery. We have to figure out where our actual land mass that the Most High allotted to Israel. This is our city, our kingdom. Now we know that the temple has been destroyed, because when you go into Matthew 24 and he's talking to the disciples, he said, you know, can you not see this thing? Every stone will be unturned, not one on top of the other. So it's been completely destroyed. But when Solomon built the temple, he built it on top of David's that land that David had bought from the Jebusites. So it's, you got to figure out where that is. Now you got those brothers that saying it's in Tel Arad and Arad, but you got to understand that Solomon built a lot of temples, and he built many to other gods, and you have to make sure, you need to be sure that you're not going over there taking your family into a temple for Moloch to sacrifice your children. And the fact that they're calling on Yahweh and Yahawashai and Jehovah is a good indication that they're sacrificing to other gods. Okay?
House of Yahweh and Bethel. See, a lot of people equate Bethel with a house of Yahweh. And then you got a lot of other different houses here. You understand what I'm saying? You're dealing with Bethel.
But Bethel was house of God, house of El.
Exactly.
Different from house of Yahweh.
That's the point that I'm saying.
Yeah.
See, so when you're talking about the house of Yahweh, see, you have one specific place which David had set up, which was the first place other than the temple.
Right.
And you had other places which were like synagogues, because in the scriptures you can appoint a house and make a house, you know, a prayer, and you have a devur there, you know, for the Torah.
Right.
But this specific place here, this is the fort of David.
Right.
And see what's happening here. We've been searching 20 years for this place, and we've been doing the 6th year. We've been here for 6 years, just covering the surrounding areas.
Now, when you say this is the fort of David, this was the house of Yahweh. The priests were, though, right?
Yeah, this was
because the city of David's down below, right?
Well, see, no. Okay.
Can you show me later on that?
Oh, yes.
I mean,
what's happening?
I want you to explain. You know,
Well, we're gonna go through the whole routine,
because I only got
that's
so
why-
much battery. So
See, what's happening here is that this is actually the tabernacle. This land that you're standing in right now is the land of the Jebusites.
Okay.
See, there was 2 Jerusalems. If you went through our research, you understand that Jerusalem.
Right.
Now, when you go into the scriptures about Jerusalem, it tells you that we have to go into Daniel. No, I'm sorry, not Daniel. It goes into when David was, 2 Samuel, when David was looking to buy, no, when he was getting ready to take down the site from the Jebusites, right? And there's a key scripture in there that says, the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spoke unto David, saying, except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in hither, thinking David cannot come in hither. 7. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, and the same is the city of David. 8. And David said unto that day, whoever getteth up to the gutter and smiteth the Jebusites, and the lame and the blind, that are hated of David's soul, he shall be chief and captain. Wherefore they said, the blind and the lame shall not come into the house. 9. So David dwelt in the fort and called it the city of David. And David built round about from Millo and inward. Now this is a very important scripture, because actually it's a mystery, and it's saying that when David went to take this land that he was going to make the city of David eventually, when he first was going to take it down, they thought that he couldn't come up. Now why? This place must have been, now here you are, this is the king, right? The Jebusites thought that he couldn't get into wherever they were. So this place must have been some place, a real good stronghold that you couldn't get in. They gave him a smart saying, except thou take away the blind and the lame, that thou cannot come in hither, thinking David could not come in hither. So they was being smart and was like, you can't come up in here, because this place must have been so well fortified. But first of all, it was like a fortress, but it must be in a place that it was impossible to get in. And if you there's another scripture which tells the same story but in a slightly different way. It's First Chronicles 11:4, and it says, and David and all Israel went to Jerusalem, which is Jebus, where the Jebusites were the inhabitants of the land. 5. And the inhabitants of Jebus said to David, thou shalt not come hither. Nevertheless, David took the castle of Zion, which is the city of David. And David said, whoever smiteth the Jebusites first shall be chief and captain. So Joab, the son of Zeruiah, went first and was chief. Okay, so when you go into the commentaries of this, in the eastward, it goes a little deeper, because in 2 Samuel, it says, and David said on that day, whoever giveth up to the gutter and smiteth the Jebusites, and the lame and the blind, that are hated of David's soul, shall be chief and captain. Wherefore they say, the blind and the lame shall not come into the house. So David dwelt in the fort. So basically it's saying that the Jebusites told David, basically they thought he couldn't come up into their fortress, because Masada means fortress in Hebrew. So it means, and in the First Chronicles 11, he called it a castle. They called it a castle. David dwelt in the castle in verse 7. So this place was big, and I'm just trying to point out the size and give you an idea that this place had to be something special, because the Jebusites were very confident that King David, now he's the king over in Hebron, and you know everybody knows of him, that he couldn't get up into this place. You understand? And then David turns around and says to his men, one of his men, whoever gets up into this place and take down the Jebusites, they will be captain, chief and captain. And Joab is the one who actually did it. But it just gives you a slight indication that this place must be, there are many fortresses in Israel. And, they're all like kind of up on a hill. But when you look at Masada is so different. It's not like any other place. It's hard to get there. And even when I went there, they're using cable cars to get up to the top of Masada, because it's hard to get there, And when you go into the commentary, it states, and see if I can. Okay, so now you have to really examine these two scriptures, 2 Samuel 5:6, and First Chronicles 11:4 and 5, I guess. Second Samuel 5, chapter 5, 6 and 6 through 9, and First Chronicles 11 through, let's say, 9. But because this is a mystery, and this is giving you little hints and clues of where actual Jerusalem is. It's saying that when David went to take the stronghold of the Jebusites, now mind you, in different passages it says different things, but it called it a fortress. It called it a fort, or in a fortress, it called it a castle. So this place was big. You know how big, castles are, and they look. But fortress, in the Hebrew, Masada means fortress. So that's a small indication too. Now you gotta realize that there were different fortresses in Israel that are now, fortresses, but Masada stands alone in them. You know, this place is huge, it's far off, it's high up, you know, so it's very distinctive. And when you go into the commentary in the Eastward on for Samuel 5 and 6, this is what it says. And you know, we just gotta try to, you know, figure this thing out. So it says, which spake, etc. Dr. Kennecott's amended translation is as follows: who speaks unto David, saying, Thou shalt not come in hither, for the blind and the lame shall drive thee away, by saying, David shall not come in hither. 2 Samuel 5 and 8, this is the commentary, and David said, Whoever smiteth the Jebusites, and through the subterraneous passage reach the lame and the blind, who hate the life of David, because the blind and the lame said, He shall not come into the house, shall be chief and captain. So Joab, the son of Zeruiah, went up and was chief. Now, reason why I'm pointing this out is because, you know, the other nations, they know where Jerusalem is. They know, you know, the secrets that we don't know, and they're just not telling us. So it's hidden, but it's you know, this area, they know of it. So they are trying to keep this information from us, but they will put in little clues about where this place is. And so the reason why I'm going into this commentary, because he's saying this is his interpretation of what the scripture means. Again, I'm going to read it again, Samuel 5 and 8, and you can go into the Strongs and see this too, because it's just in the commentary. There's two different commentaries, and I'm going to go into both. And David said, Whoever smiteth the Jebusites through the subterraneous passage reach the lane. So he's trying to say that there's a hard way to get to this, you know, to get up into this place, because it's hard to get into, right? And I'm showing a picture of Masada while we talk. It's very hard to get into it. That David had said, whoever getteth up to the gutter. That means they had to go up through the water passages, or the subterranean passage to get into this place. And this is how David was able to take the stronghold, because they thought that he could not get up in there. And that's why they said that little riddle, you know, with the blind and the lame, you know, thou shalt not come hither. Because if you got blind people with you, or somebody who's lame, who's hurt, when you're trying to get up into Masada, you're not going to make it up there. It's up on a huge, big hill mountain. It's very high up. So it would make sense why the Jebusites would say, you know, you basically, they didn't think that he can get up in there. And he did. And he, you know, he captured the stronghold, the fortress, Masada. And he called it, the city of David. Okay, but let's go to the second commentary. And this is also in the Strong's, but it's just a different commentary. And it says, because of its impregnable position. Now, this is his interpretation of it. Now, they must know the position of this place that is, you know, hard to get to. It says, because of its impregnable position, it was a wise policy to secure Jerusalem as the site of the capital. So this is what David had, they're saying, this is the conclusion they came to, and this is what David must have had in his mind, why he would make this site the capital of Jerusalem, because of its impregnable position. So again, it gives you a hint that this place is hard to get to. It's out of, you know, sorts, and, you know, that he would consider this place to be Jerusalem. Okay? So again, now that's two, you know, things to look at as far as, you know, why we would consider Masada as Jerusalem and not Tel Arad and not Arad. Because although they have many fortresses at these places that they're showing us, it don't fit in with the scriptures of giving us hints of how hard it is to get into Jerusalem, this, you know, the stronghold, the city of David, you know. Okay, So I just want to point that out, and I'm putting a picture up there so you can look at Masada. It's not like any other place. You understand? Okay, so let's go a little further. I'm going to give you some more information. Hold on. You know, and they're trying their best to hide this information because, one, they need to deceive us. They need us to go into Israel at the wrong time and face destruction. Okay? So if they can deceive you, if they don't tell us where it is, actually, if you understand that it's Masada and it's not Tel Arad, there's no reason for you to go into Israel when they build this third temple. And it's going to be Hebrew Israelites who are in the forefront, but actually it's going to be the heathens who are going to build it, just like in Revelation 11 states. Okay? Okay, let me look for it. Okay. Now, I want to give you this information about where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, because there's information that the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in the Qumran caves. That's the story that they say, and they're sticking to it, basically. But they always will create some story. Oh, a Bedouin was going in the desert, and he found these, he found the Dead Sea Scrolls in these areas. And we know that these Gentiles are good at lying, because the scripture says they are the father of lies, and they make up these elaborate stories so that to fit the scenario. But what they don't tell you is that parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls were found at Masada. Okay? And it wasn't initially in their plans to tell it. Someone else came out with the information, and then because they basically says the Qumran caves. That's all they tell you. But they found parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls in Masada. And when you look at this map, it gives you a key indication of all the caves along the Dead Sea where they found fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay? But we know that they lie about everything. We know that. And so, it could have been that they have found all of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was found in Masada. And I'm going to show you this small documentary I found. Please be patient and just listen to it and watch some of the information, because it's clear if Masada is, the sites that David took from the Jebusites and built, the city of David on this place, it's understandable why the Dead Sea Scrolls would be there and not in the Qumran caves at all. But they needed to give us a story to make this thing fit and put it in caves all leading up to the Jerusalem that they're calling Jerusalem today. But actually, mainly all the Dead Sea Scroll fragments were found by Masada. And I have some information, that I found, so I just wanted to share with you. Yeah, it's one of the caves. There were about, I don't know how many altogether, different caves, but maybe like, I forgot, it said it's up to like 11 or 12 different fragments or whatever, but one of the caves was Nahal Hever, and this caves are located between En Gadi and Masada, and I'll show you on the map where En Gadi is. It's right close to Masada, and which is right in the midst of the Judea wilderness. And that's a very famous wilderness for us because it's where David ran into when he was hiding and running from Saul. This is the same area. And then also it's very close to Hebron, where King David was king for many years before he took the stronghold of the Jebusites and made the city of David. So it's all right in that same area. So those fragments that was found at Nahal Hever are very, they saying it's one of the largest caches of ancient documents was found in the Judean desert. That's in the, our wilderness where Judea is. So, but we know how they like to taint the information. They'd like to act, change the stories, just like they did with the Kadesh information. They moved all the locations, moved it out the way, and unless you go into the scriptures and dissect it, because it's a mystery, it's not something that's really straight out and straightforward. You got to search and do research. It took me a while to come up with that Kadesh information. Just the same it is with Masada. It's not readily. This one is even more harder than Kadesh. The information is so hidden because we're talking about Jerusalem. This is our land, and they made it desolate. But it's deep. Now, so I just wanted to point that out, that one of the main caves where they said the largest caches of ancient documents was found is Nahal Hever. Now, it's right by Masada. And they also found fragments in Masada as well. So why would there be Dead Sea Scrolls in Masada when Jerusalem is all the way up, up north? You understand? And we know that they lie about everything. So I just wanted to point that out. I wanted to give you some food for thought so that you can go in and do even more research. Because I know the Most High is going to give more. Because this is how he did with the Kadesh information. I didn't have it all at first. And I kept making little videos about it. But, just to put it out there so that people could start looking and, searching for themselves. And this is the same thing that I'm doing now. I just want to give you the information that you need to go in and study it, where our Jerusalem is, so that these people don't deceive you when it comes times to building the third temple in Tel Arad, in these places where Solomon built many temples to other gods, and specifically the god of Moloch, where they sacrificed children over in that area. So, okay, so I just wanted to say that. Now, I wanted to go into some more things. Just be a little patient with me. All of the documents may have been very well found in Masada, but they will never tell us that. Masada is Jerusalem. They will never tell us that. So we have to put it all together and figure it out. Okay, here's another thing. So I wanted to go into if I can find it. Okay, so I want to give you the scriptures that show that Solomon built many places of worship to other gods, just so you'll have it. So if you go to 1 Kings 11:7, it says, "Then did Solomon build a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incenses and sacrificed to their gods." So this scripture clearly shows you that Solomon, in the area, it says, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, in that area where Jerusalem is, in one of them hills over there, he built gods to the abomination, for different gods, for Moab, for Ammon, because he was marrying these women, strange wives. And this is why the Most High tell us not to, get with these other nations because of this reason. And Solomon fell, but he made sacrifice and altars to all the gods of the women that he married. In verse 8 it says, "And likewise he did for all his strange wives." Now, he had over 700 wives, didn't he? So that means he built sacrifices, burnt incense, and sacrifices to these gods all over the place. And this is what these brothers are showing you. So just because somebody show you a picture with some ancient rocks and some dirt and even some buildings does not mean this was Jerusalem. You have to do your homework, and you have to go into these scriptures and dissect it so that you can find out, where to be and where not to be. I was always telling you that this is going to be a snare. The Most High says, study to show yourself approved, because you're going to need to be approved to make it into this kingdom. This kingdom is going to be something. It's not a piece of cake, people. Most High is sifting through Israel, like he said, and everybody is not going to make it, because if you're not willing to serve the Most High like he wants to be served, and do the things you need to do, one, like study and worship him on the correct holy days, and know these laws, statutes, and commandments like you breathe, basically, we're not worthy. And that's what it's boiled down to. We have to have works. We have to have faith to be in a place, even though a war is going to start in this area, to still come here and stand, because the word says, within my borders. That's the kind of faith you're going to have. So every time somebody show you a scripture about Edom, and that there's going to be destruction, you're not shaking and worrying, because you study and you know what the words say. Okay, so I wanted to show you that Solomon built many places of worship. So when them brothers over in Tel Arad showing you these houses and things like that, you need to know that what the Most High said. Also, they also was showing you places of where their burial site was, like that all the kings was buried there. But you must look at 1 Kings 16 and 4. 1 Kings 16 and 24. Oh, let me see, make sure I got the right one. Okay, 1 Kings 16 and 31. Okay, I'm sorry. In 1632, and he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which is built in Samaria. So now also we need to know where Samaria is, because that's another place that a lot of kings of Judah, they were buried in Samaria. Not necessarily in the city of David. Only certain kings were buried there, and certain kings were buried in Samaria, which is close by. So we have to understand that too. Because we don't know where any of these locations are, you can't assume because you see some rocks built in the dirt and people building over there now, that assume that that's Jerusalem. Israel, you have to study to show yourself approved, and that's the point I'm bringing out with this. I'm giving you information on possibly about Masada, so you can look into Masada, because that's a very, very significant site. Not just because they're giving us a narrative of Israelites ran into Masada and took the stronghold, and to prevent Rome from taking them out, that they ran into Masada. But when you go into the Josephus, and when you read that story of 70 AD, when they took down Jerusalem, and then you read about Masada, the stories are so similar, they sound alike. It's very well the same story, because they lie so much, and they have made these narratives to fit their agenda. But it's up to you to go into the scriptures and study what actually happened. We know that Josephus, although he was a Hebrew, he was hired by the Romans. So his story must fit their perspective. That's another thing. Taking these books and trusting them so much to where you getting distorted. There's a reason why the Most High told us not to mate with any other book, because all of these books in some way have been tainted. The Bible is the only one that you can truly stand on. The book, yes, it helped the woman, it helped the church, it helps us to get some understanding and get a little more information. But you have to take into consideration that these books have been tampered with, and that people have used them to sway our judgment. The story of Masada and the takedown of Jerusalem are basically one story, but they made two. Now they've made it in two locations, you know. And because Josephus was a Hebrew and he wrote the stories, you got to take in consider that he was hired by the Romans to write it, and it was edited and everything. That's just like, let's just say, Al Sharpton giving his version of what's going on in America today. Okay? That's like the same, him or Jesse Jackson writing a book because he's a Hebrew and he was an activist at that time. We taking his word verbatim because he wrote a book about what was going on during the civil rights, or what's going on even during this time now. Can you imagine us putting that much validity in something that Al Sharpton wrote, or Jesse Jackson, or any one of these leaders that has been taken down, you know, by America? So that's the same thing. That's how we have to look at these books, these Josephus, even though it does give us some valid information, and we can, you know, basically, because it coincides with what the Bible says. Something like the War of Jews, when the Bible doesn't give that much of account. It's giving you two different accounts of Masada and the takedown of Jerusalem, when actually it could very well be one account, and Masada is Jerusalem. Okay, so I want to give you that information so that you can see. So, and I also want to show you where Solomon and a lot of the kings of Israel and a lot of the kings of Judea went against the Most High, and they started worshiping other gods. So they were building places, these altars, all over the place. And that's what these brothers are showing you. AHAYAH in Kenya, when they going in talking about Tel Arad is the place, and calling Israel back into that land, because there's supposed to be a mass slaughter of Israel. 6 million Jews is what they are projecting. So I want to wake you up on that matter. The 6 million Jews' future Holocaust is us. Edom is moving out of Israel. To 2 Chronicles 7 and 16. Basically, this is when Solomon finished building the temple for the Most High. And hold on, and I'm going to read it down to like 20 or 21, just so you can get an idea, and then I'll explain. Okay, 2 Chronicles 7 and 16. For now I have chosen and sanctified this house, that my name may be there forever, and my eyes and heart shall be there perpetually. 17. And as for thee, if thou walk before me, as David thy father walked, and do according to all that I have commanded thee, and thou shalt observe my statutes and judgments, then will I establish the throne of thy kingdom. Then shall establish the throne of thy kingdom, according as I have covenanted with David thy father, saying, there shall not fail thee a man to be a ruler in Israel. 19. But if ye turn away and forsake my statutes and commandments, for I have set before you, and shall go and serve other gods and worship them. 20. Then will I pluck them out by their roots out of my land, which I have given them. And this house, which I have sanctified for my name, will I cast out of my sight, and will make it to be a proverb and a byword among all nations. 21. This is it says, and this house, which is high, shall be an astonishment to everyone that passes by it, so that he shall say, why hath the Lord done this? The Lord AHAYAH done this unto his land, unto this land, and unto this house. So this scripture is showing that the Most High is saying, even though he's vowed that it'll be desolate, his house will be desolate, he's saying that people will come past here, come past the place, and they shall say, why has the Lord done this unto this land? So actually it's showing that it won't be utterly desolate. We're talking about the stronghold of David, and we're talking about the Most High's temple. The temple is what is utterly going to be destroyed, because that's what Christ was saying, no stone will be upon another. So we know that will be completely taken down. But here the Most High is saying that people will come by and look at this place and show that, it will be an astonishment to them. So that people will be going by this place. Okay, let me take you to another scripture that says the same thing. It says in Lamentations 2:15, all that pass by clap their hands at thee. They hiss and wag their head at the daughter of Jerusalem, saying, is this the city that men call the protection of beauty, the joy, the whole earth? 16. All thine enemies have opened their mouth against thee. They hiss and gnash their teeth. They say, we have swallowed her up. Certainly this is the day that we look for. We have found it. We have seen it. So this is also letting you know that they are not going to let us know where Jerusalem is on no level. Even if some brothers like Rawchaa and Kenya come up and act like they know where this place is, they are not trying to tell us where Israel is. And he's in compliance with those people over in Israel. They are the synagogue of Satan. The scriptures tell us that we ain't not to have anything to do with them. These brothers are actually getting in bed with them and try to proclaim that they have found Jerusalem over in Tel Arad. And you have got to know that that's a lie. First of all, okay? And okay, so then let's go to Deuteronomy 29 and 22. It says, so that the generations to come of your children that shall rise up after you, and the stranger that shall come from a far land shall say, when they see the plagues of the land and the sickness which AHAYAH hath laid upon it. 29 and 23. And that the whole land thereof is brimstone, salt, and burning, that is not sown nor beareth, nor any grass groweth within, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which AHAYAH overthrew in his anger, his wrath. 29 and 24. Even all nations shall say, wherefore hath AHAYAH done this unto this land, that meaneth the heat of his great anger. Okay, hold on. 25. Then men shall say, because they have forsaken the covenant of their power, AHAYAH of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them from out of the land of Egypt. So basically he's saying, even all the nations, so people will be coming by and seeing this place and looking upon it and shaking their heads and hissing, because and they will say, because they didn't obey their father. So although they're saying that this land is going to be desolate, it's showing that people will come from afar. When you go back to Deuteronomy 22, 29 and 22, it says, so that the generation to come of your children that shall rise up after you, and the strangers that shall come from a far land shall say, when they see the plagues of the land. Now if you go to Israel today, you don't see no plagues of the land. It looks regular, right? Because the heathens are over there claiming that Jerusalem is the real Jerusalem, but we know it's not. But there's a place that this scripture is talking about, that people will come from a far land and they shall look at the plagues of the land. Okay, so I want to put this picture up to show you. Masada, this place is very well known for people to come to. They come to see this place because they know that this is Jerusalem, and they know how wonderful it was. It was amazing. It was built, this thing. It was built up. And so now they know that we fell. They know what happened to the children of Israel. They know that we don't know who we are. But they go to these places and they look upon the place. Masada is one of the well-visited places in Israel. It's maybe like the #1 place. And I'll have to look it up again, but I'm pretty sure it's like the #1 place. They come from afar to see this place. This was our great Jerusalem, where all the kings of the earth in Israel was ruling out of. This is Jerusalem, Masada. And they tried to hide it through Josephus giving 2 accounts, one in 70 AD and in 173 AD, talking about, you know, the fall of Masada, and that it was a mass suicide. They made it this elaborate story, but it's, you know how well they lied. Okay? And I think when I put the archaeologists speaking about how they dug up Masada and how every hour they were finding new finds and new digs, that it seems that they're talking about a place that is very well known, that has some very significant findings in this place. Not that it was just a place that some Israelites ran to and, you know, bombarded themselves in, and then they committed suicide. They was finding things every hour, new discoveries of things, of ancient artifacts, and, you know, that they would use, because this was Jerusalem, where all our information and artifacts were. That's why those people were finding. Please, I'm talking about the reference to the video I put up from the Discovery Channel, and they're explaining of how they did this dig in Masada, and every hour and every few minutes they were finding very valuable things. And then
hands of their enemies as slaves. When Roman soldiers poured through the broken walls of Masada, they were greeted only by the silence of death. In 1963, almost 2,000 years later, Israel undertook an ambitious excavation at the flat-top rock of Masada. What they found appeared to match Josephus Flavius's description in uncanny detail. Today, however, Masada is once again under siege. Some scholars question the story of the Zealots' last desperate hours, where they ask, are the bodies of the 900? Or is the tale of the mass suicide nothing more than the hackneyed literary device of an ancient historian? In fact, did it happen at all?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the Rock of Masada, which is a very important page in the book of history which called Israel. If we are talking about heroism in this book, this is the spot and this is the page. I would like to go with you back around 2,100 years ago. King Herod took the road that we did today, and when he came to the foot of Masada, he said to himself, I'm going to change this place into my winter resort.
At what has become one of the most visited tourist sites in the world, guides tell the story of the Zealots' last stand and their self-sacrifice as historical fact.
And when the Romans arrived to the top, they found here food storages full with food, water cistern full with water, and 960 hero dead bodies laying around here, left this world as free people, not as Roman slaves.
Dani Bahat is not your average visitor at Masada. He is a veteran archaeologist who took part in the 1963 excavation.
The place is so dear to me that I refrain from coming here. I'm today here for the first time after 7 years. The idea is, you know, further from the eyes, the more further we go, it becomes more sublime.
Perhaps at no other archaeological site in the world has the tension between the sublime and the real played itself out more dramatically than at Masada. Here, in an unprecedented fusion of myth and archaeology, the story of Masada took on a life of its own, a life that had to do more with modern-day Israel than the siege of 2,000 years ago. When the young state of Israel needed a symbol of national pride, the call to excavate Masada enticed hundreds of volunteers from around the world. What they found would not only excite archaeologists, but would create something of a national shrine for Israel.
It became our national pilgrimage, since we saw it in the last link which connects our country, or our people to our country. And we, of course, wanted to renew that link. We went every year on a pilgrimage, all the youth movements, and everyone used to come to Masada.
In October 1963, the stronghold was laid open down to the foundations, this time by the archaeologists. A giant mission of exploration supported by volunteers from 29 different countries, headed by Professor Yigal Yadin.
Yadin, former head of the Israeli Defense Forces and the most celebrated archaeologist in Israel, orchestrated the enormous undertaking at Masada. He had a mission which had worldwide attention.
Well, for a long time we have been the people of the book living in the land of the book. Then for 2,000 years we have been the people of the book without the land. Now, for the first time after 2,000 years, we are again living in the land of the book. My aim is, I would say, to live again as the people of the book in the land of the book.
They began their assault on the mountain in the scorching desert in 1963. The excavation became, next to the tomb of Tutankhamun, one of the most publicized digs of the 20th century. It was a very exciting time for young Israeli archaeologists like Gideon Förster.
And one can remember the very great excitement we had coming into the field, starting our work on an unknown country, the hundreds, thousands of volunteers who took part in the unfolding of the history of Masada. This was a site that was actually some kind of a national site. It was a national hope by everyone to be able to work on this site, which was very difficult to excavate because of it's so far away from any other center. We had, of course, a lot of information, particularly from Josephus, and we were very eager to see if our expectations were to be fulfilled.
In contrast to the painstaking tedium of an ordinary dig, Masada yielded up important finds daily, sometimes hourly.
Things turn up every day, every day. It's not that kind of site where you dig for weeks and weeks until you find something. It's loaded with finds. This was the greatest time of my life.
Charred beams and blackened stones testified to a great conflagration. Biblical scrolls and 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 a synagogue spoke of Jewish occupants. Catapult stones and Roman period arrowheads told of the intensity of the siege.
Things. And then I pointed to the information that fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in Masada, and there's a video attached to that as well.
Henson, riveting. Okay, Ken, so we go to Masada, and there's some kind of a large rock or something. I'll let you pick it up from there.
It's being excavated in the 1960s by the great Israeli archaeologist Yigal Yadin, and he's got a team up there. They have uncovered an ancient synagogue, one of the oldest synagogues in the world. It's right next to the retaining wall on the outside of the rocky precipice. This place was impregnable. It took the Romans 7 months to build an earthen ramp all the way up the side of the cliff, which they did using Jewish slaves, by the way, from the Great Revolt of the 1st century. They got to the very top with their battering ram and knocked down the walls, but part of that wall still stands. And as Yadin was excavating the rubble of the wall, he came upon the remains of parchment fragment, ancient parchment, the same type of vellum material we were talking about.
Like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
It was a fragment of a Dead Sea Scroll.
Like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
It was a fragment of a Dead Sea Scroll.
Like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
It was a fragment of a Dead Sea Scroll.
Sea Scrolls.
It was a fragment of a Dead Sea Scroll, which was astonishing because these scrolls were found way up the shore of the Dead Sea. It must be 30 miles up the shore of the Dead Sea. There's a place called Qumran, where the bulk of this material was found. What is a mangled fragment, half disintegrated, down at Masada? Why, Masada was supposed to have been inhabited by a group of anti-Roman zealots, and the folks who lived up at Qumran, where the scrolls were written, were supposed to be, according to the dominant theory, Essenes.
The Essenes,
who were peace-loving kind of monastics. What is a mangled fragment, half disintegrated, down at Masada? Why, Masada was supposed to have been inhabited by a group of anti-Roman zealots, and the folks who lived up at Qumran, where the scrolls were written, were supposed to be, according to the dominant theory, Essenes.
The Essenes,
who were peace-loving kind of monastic order. Here we've got a fragment of one of their Dead Sea Scrolls, and we know it was one of theirs because an identical fragment was found in the ruins of Qumran, further north along the Dead Sea. And not only is it a Dead Sea Scroll, but it is a non-biblical scroll, one of those that never made it into our Bibles.
So I'm just giving this information to you, brothers and sisters, so you'll understand that we are being lied to, and they are not trying to give us this information. They're not trying to tell us about our sacred land and where we were and all the things. And I'm trying to put this information together for you, and so that it will cause you to go and study for yourself. Go and look at this information so you can find out where to go and where not to go. There is a 6 million estimation of a Holocaust that they are looking to have very soon, and part of it is going to be Israel, and America is going to be that other part. So that's why you need to come out of Babylon and not be a sacrifice. You cannot hold any more Passovers in America anymore. There's too much at stake, especially going to Atlanta, where all those coffins are. They got guillotines set up and waiting for some big event. You know about those FEMA camps because we've been talking about it on these sites forever. But at some point, they are looking to use those sites, those places. Don't you get yourself caught up in that place. You must come out of her. Come out of Babylon. Praise AHAYAH. Okay, so AHAYAH bless you. I give you glory and praise AHAYAH by Hashem Yashaya Christ, and I pray I see you